Welcome back. This is video 2 of our Ableton tutorials. In this video, we're going to be concentrating on racks. So to start off, we're going to want to group 4 synthesizers, like so, and we're going to insert an audio effect rack on the group track that we just made. Now, a chain is a parallel signal path within a rack. So chain 1, we're going to want to name dry, as it's the dry signal. And we're going to create a new one and call it FX chain. So chain 2. Now we're going to want to open these chains and set the dry zone 0 to 127. And we want our FX chain set to that same 0 to 127. Now we're going to want to fade both of them 100% in opposite directions. Like so. And we're going to want to map the chain selector to macro 1. Now macros are pots that multiple parameters can be assigned to within a rack. So in chain 2, we're going to want to insert a beat repeat with the filter on 1.12 kilohertz. Cool. And we want that at 2.89 Q value with a grid of 1/8. Cool. We want the chance on 1%, 100%, sorry, and the gate on 7/16, which is already there. And then we want the pitch at 0.5 cents with the pitch shift decay at 1.59%. And we're going to want to map this variation and interval to macro 2. All right. Cool. So now we're going to want to insert a filter delay. So we want the left on delay time 3 at 2.36 kilohertz. And a Q value of 2.25 plus 4 dB. Okay, so the left and right, we want delay time of 1/4 note, like so, and 271 hertz at 2.75 Q. Okay, and then we want the feedback set at 46%. Okay, so the right delay time 5, we want 1.2 kilohertz at a Q value of 1.25, and we want the feedback at 24% and the dBs at 6. So we're going to want to map to macro 1 the feedback of the filter delay and set the dry wet signal at -13 dB. Now, moving on, we're going to want to insert a chorus effect. We're going to set the HP delay at 1 kilohertz and delay 1 at 6.12 milliseconds. Cool. Now, onto delay 2. We want the mod at +7 milliseconds, amount at 1.9 milliseconds, rate at 1 hertz, and the dry wet signal at 100%. Okay. Now, map to macro 1, the beat repeat decay 0% to max 65%. then we've got the chorus feedback at 0% to max 37%.
You gotta jump out of map mode. Oh, okay. 37.
Okay. Now, map to macro 2, beat repeat interval, and beat repeat variation. Okay. Now we're going to want to insert a max LFO to modulate macro 1 and 2 at different rates. So we're going to want to set the rate to 16 bars once we put that LFO in there. Set the rate to 16 bars. Yep. And then map to macro 1 and macro 2 with a depth of 50%. Cool.
Sweet, so moving on, we're going to create a drum rack. So we're going to make a new MIDI track and we're going to drop in a drum rack. First thing we want to do is insert a kick drum. So we've previously selected the BD Club 006 kick drum.
Ooh.
So we'll drop that into the C1 slot. Next up, we're going to create a new MIDI clip inside our MIDI drum track there. We're going to set the loop length to 4 bars. And we're going to put the kick by double clicking on 1.0, 1.2.3, 3.0, 3.2.3, and 4.4.3. Cool. Next up, we want to insert a hi-hat to slot 2. We're going to use the HHCL001. So we'll drop that into slot 2. We're going to go into our MIDI clip and we're going to insert by double clicking the hat on 1.1.3 and 1.2.3. Now we're going to lower the velocity of that one to 70 and then we're going to select that and duplicate it across using Command D. Now, for the hats, to create movement, we're going to increase the delay returns on that channel of D and C both to 100%. Cool, so let's have a little listen to that. Nice. Next up, let's have a listen to those all together using the scene. So now we want to insert a snare. So we're going to search for the SN Flam 01. We're going to insert that on slot 3. We're going to open up our MIDI clip and we're going to put the snare on 1.3.4. 1.3.4. Cool. We're going to decrease the velocity to 75% and then we're going to go into the sample on the slot there. And we want to trim the sample to 0.00:300. That's it. We're going to set the fade to 140 milliseconds. Fade out. Perfect. Cool. We're gonna insert a reverb now so that we can make a specific reverb for our snare. We're gonna set the decay time to 650 milliseconds. We're gonna set the reflect knob to -1. Yep. The diffuse to -3. And the density to 27%. So we can have a listen to that by clicking the little play button on the slot there. And that's our little snare. Cool. Moving on, we want to demonstrate an instrument rack. So we're going to head over to the operator where we have our pad sound. And we're going to create an instrument rack. So we can do that by selecting all of the devices and hitting Command G, and that groups everything. So inside there, we can open up the macros, and we can map the auto filter cutoff, which is the frequency knob, to macro 1, and then we can go into our macro mappings and set the minimum value for that to 1.15 kilohertz. Cool. Next up, we want to insert a saturator after the auto filter. And leaving most of the things on standard, we want to map the drive to macro 1. And we want to set the maximum value for that at 10 decibels in the macro mapping section. Cool. Next up, after the chain, we want to insert a max LFO. We're going to map macro 1 to the LFO. Cool. We want to set the LFO to random. We want to change the rate to time and set that to 2 bars. Next up, we're going to smooth the randomness to 100%, and we're going to set the depth to 55%. Now we can have a little listen to what we've done there by pressing play on the MIDI clip. And you can see there how we've created a randomized modularization. And yeah, now let's listen to that in context with the rest of our track using the scene launch. Thanks guys, we'll see you in the next video.